Hello, handmade journeyers. My name is Amy Eaton, and I am a product photographer and educator working with handmade sellers just like you to create awesome product photos for your online business. I just want to say thanks a lot to Jamie for inviting me to do this tutorial for you to help you out with your editing. I know that can be a really big challenge for a lot of you. Editing programs can be really overwhelming and confusing, and there's a lot of tools, and it's hard to know which ones you need and which ones are going to help your photos look their best. So that's why I'm here today. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Pixlr. Pixlr.com is my pick for the best free editing software out there. I know a lot of you use PicMonkey, and if it works for you, I suggest you keep going with it if you like. My personal preference, though, is Pixlr, and I'll tell you why. With PicMonkey, my concern is that there is a great deal of filters and whatnot involved in the PicMonkey program, which can adversely affect your product images. Filters tend to have different color casts and different contrasts and stuff like that make images look intriguing for things like Instagram, but when it comes to your products, you want them to look crisp, clean, and you want the colors to be as true to form as possible. So I highly recommend avoiding filters at all costs when it comes to your product listing photos. PicMonkey does have other tools as well, but they're a little bit more different. They're not really clear how to use them, and it doesn't really speak the language as a lot of other photo editing programs. So if you ever wanted to upgrade to, say, a Photoshop or try something different, it doesn't really prepare you for that in any way. So Pixlr uses the same tools as Photoshop, but their menus are a little bit easier to navigate. There's less to bog you down in terms of irrelevant tools that you don't really need. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about Pixlr, and I'm just going to run you through a quick process how to open and edit a photo and have it ready for your listings. So hopefully this is going to be just what you need. So getting started, head to pixlr.com, which I have written up here. And you can just scroll down and you can see there's two options here. There's Pixlr Editor and Pixlr Express. I use Pixlr Editor because Pixlr Express is a little bit more like what you might use just to play around. It has different effects and different overlays and borders and stuff like that. It can be fun, but not so much for your product listings. Launch web app. And it's going to take a second to load, and when it loads, you have some options here. So creating a new image would be blank. This would be if you're creating something like graphic, but we're going to click right here, open image from computer. And you're going to navigate to wherever you've stored your images from your computer, from your camera, on your computer, and click and open your pretty standard file opening process. And here it is, it's ready to go. So this is what I'm going to use as an example. And I like to maximize it to have the full screen. So really quick overview, there's a bunch of different options here in terms of filters and adjustments and layer options and stuff like that. I'm going to tell you only what you need to know so these aren't too overwhelming. If in the future you feel like exploring, I encourage you to do so, but for this process, we're just going to keep it really simple. Here are some tools that you can use. The ones we're going to focus on is crop. That's our big one. We're just going to focus on the crop tool today. Over here, you can navigate, so you can kind of scroll around your image. If you had it zoomed in or zoomed out, you can navigate around different areas of it. These are layers, which I'm not going to get into today because you probably don't need to know about them. They are kind of cool, but that may be a tutorial for another time. This is the history function, and I do like this, and I'll show you as we go through how this works. Basically, it keeps a track of the edits you made, and if you want to go back on anything, you can do so here. All right, so now that we have our picture open and we're ready to go, we're going to use the crop tool to crop and resize the image. So you can either click on this symbol here, which is pretty universal for crop, or you can hit C on your keyboard. So if I am selected on something else and I hit the C key, it's just a shortcut to the crop tool. All right, so now that it's selected, you want to go to where it says constraint, and there's a drop-down menu, and pick output size. This is going to be the quickest and easiest way to crop and resize your image. So I'm going to resize this to 1000 by 800. Why those numbers, you may ask? Because for Etsy listings, this is a 5:4 ratio, which is your ideal ratio for Etsy listing product photos. And the reason for that is because when somebody searches for something and the photo that pops up, your main image that pops up in the listings, that's the ratio, 5:4. So you want to try to have that ratio. The reason 1000 by 800 is because that's just a size that Etsy recommends. It's not too big so that it takes forever to load. It doesn't bog down the system or create slow loading images. It's just the right size for quality. So it's good. Stick with that. All right, so now that we have the crop tool selected and our ratios and our sizes selected, by the way, these are pixels. I don't know if I mentioned that, but this is 1000 pixels by 800 pixels. All right, so we're going to click and drag. So this is going to be our crop box. Now, if I want to center this, I am going to you can move this about to wherever you need. You can click the corners and make it smaller to achieve the look that you're going for. I'm going to want my product photo to be right in the middle. So I have achieved that right now. I can hit enter, and there's my crop. I'm going to zoom in so we can see it better. My favorite zoom in shortcut is using Command or Control and the plus sign. Really easy way to zoom in and out of your photos. That goes for Photoshop and Pixlr as well. All right, so there's our crop. Done. Moving on to levels. So levels affects brightness and contrast. To do that, where you find that in Pixlr, is to go to your adjustments and levels. So here you see something called a histogram. Now the histogram is just basically a capture of the tones of your image. So what you can do to change your image is play around with these sliders a little bit. If you drag the right slider to the left, you can see, I'm going to move this so you can see it a little bit better. You can see when I pull this slider to the left that the image gets brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. That's too bright, but that's just an example. The slider on the left, if I pull it to the right, it gets darker and darker and darker. And this middle slider adjusts mid-tones. So this affects the brightest brights of the photo. This affects the darkest darks, and this everything in between. Now, the important takeaway from that is just what it does. You don't necessarily need to know about highlights or lowlights or anything like that. Just know that when you click this and drag it to the edge, I typically recommend dragging it to the edge of the histogram, so to the very edge of the mountain, and do the same at this end. And that should give you a fairly well-balanced image. Don't hesitate to play around with it if it's not quite your style, but generally speaking, this is a look that you want. It's really important that your images appear bright enough, because if they don't, it's really tough for customers to get a good sense of your image if it's not bright enough. If it's too bright, same applies. So try to get a nice balanced image by using these sliders. Okay, good to go. So the next step that you need to be concerned about is your color balance. Sometimes when we take photos, especially if we take them outside and the light is bouncing off of things like grass, it can make your image look a little bit green. Or if you're shooting pictures inside, it might have a bit of a yellow tone depending on what other materials are in your room. In my house, I have older wood floors that have that kind of yellowish tone. So if I take photos in my home, they often appear to have a yellowish tinge. So I have to make all those adjustments in Photoshop. So it's actually pretty easy to do that once you get the hang of it. You go to Adjustment and Color Balance. This can look really confusing at first, but bear with me. The image is concerned with 3 sliders, red, green, blue, RGB. If you slide this to the right, you can see the red tones increase. If you slide it to the left, these are the cyan tones. I think that's how you pronounce that. That's how I call it anyway. And if so you can see that it increases these. So if I were to have an image that has a really reddish tone, I can balance that out by pulling it to the left. And this is the green. So green is similar. If I pull it to the right, it increases the green. If I pull it to the left, it increases the magenta tones. So I can correct a green color cast or a purpley one. Purple is more rare, but it does happen from time to time. And this is the blue, and this is what I find most often used and most often is an issue, is the blue and the yellow tones of an image. So you can pull, as you can see, the image gets bluer, also known as cooler, or warmer, also known as warmer, and yellow. All right, so unfortunately, this was already fairly well color balanced. But if I remember correctly, I think I might have another one that I adjusted a little bit to not have such a good color balance that I could adjust and show you. All right, so here is another option. So if I go to adjustments and color balance, then I have the option of changing this. Now, looking at this with my just plain eye, it looks a little yellow to me, so I can balance it out by adding a little blue, and you just want to do a little bit. It can get pretty hairy pretty fast if you get too extreme with this. I just want a little bit of change. So you can see here that I have added just a little blue to the image. It's cooled it off just a little bit, which is exactly what I want. It looks like it could be slightly green, but barely. I'm going to add just a little bit of magenta by sliding the green slider to the left. There. And click OK. Now remember me talking about my history button? Down here you can change the history. So I just adjusted the color balance. If I want to go back to what this looked like, if I thought, oh geez, I don't really like that color balance, I can change it. I can go back to the open image and start all over again. And this also gives you a chance to see the changes you made. It's subtle, but it's there, and that's what's important. This image looks a little bit too yellow, especially if you look at the white of the dish. You can see it has a bit of a yellow tone, and after the balance, it's more of a white. So play around with that. It does take a little bit of practice, but it's worth it, and it's really important for your product images that the colors look as true to form as possible. Okay, so now the last step, really that's all you need to do with your photos. There's not a whole lot you need to do other than that, other than crop and resize, adjust your levels, which adjusts your balance and contrast, your brightness and contrast, and also your color balance. Once those three steps have been achieved, you're free to go ahead and save. So you can go to File and Save. You can either choose JPEG, but save it at full quality because we do want it to be the best quality it can be because this is our product image and it's super important. Or you can save it in PNG, transparent and full quality. The transparent won't apply because it's just a photo. If you had an image that was a graphic like a logo and you wanted the background to not have that like white box around it, then that would be what you would use that for. But in this situation, JPEG or PNG will do just fine. Make sure that My Computer is selected on the left. Click OK, save it wherever you like. I'm replacing this one, and done. And that is the end of the Pixlr tutorial. Also, if you find these boxes a little distracting, you can get rid of them, which is really nice too. Same with this ad. I do like this program, and I hope that you folks do as well. Give it a try and leave a comment on the video and let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, and I do hope that this helps you with your editing process because it is a really important step in your product photography. Thanks so much to Jamie for letting me share this with you today. And I wanted to let you folks know that I'm going to include a link to a download that includes the cheat sheet that I've just talked about. So I've actually outlined all of these steps in a cheat sheet. It's very clear and simple. And I've also thrown in a couple of other things I think you'll find interesting. Pixlr is actually one of the tools that I talk about in my 5 tools for product photography that you need to have for great photos. It's one of the tools for that. So I'm going to send you that so that you can see what the other tools are that also are really going to help you. And I also have a list of 90 more, or actually more than 90 prop ideas to help you with styling your photos, just to help you generate some ideas. I know that's something that the community struggles with as well, and understandably so. Sometimes picking the right props could be really tough. So I'm going to throw that in as well to help spark some ideas for you folks. Also wanted to mention that I have a Facebook group as well. Not nearly as cool as Jamie's, but in it we talk a lot about product photography. It's entirely dedicated to learning product photography for handmade and product-based sellers. It's called Master Your Biz Photos with Amy Eaton, and I would love to see you in there if you have questions. As usual, I will, of course, always be kicking around Jamie's group to help out whenever I can with tips and tricks and to offer advice whenever I can. And this is all coming up ahead of the launch of my online photo school, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be called Photocraft Academy. It's launching next month with my comprehensive product photography course for handmade sellers. So if you're interested in that, do stay tuned and you will be the first to know. Thanks so much, everyone. Happy editing, happy photographing, and good luck with your online shops.